Imagine for a moment that you wake up in the middle of a theatrical performance. The lights are on, the other actors move with astonishing confidence. They recite their lines with pinpoint precision, and they seem to know exactly where they are headed. However, you do not have the script. You do not remember rehearsing, and, even more unsettling, you do not even know who put you there or what the title of the play is. In this situation, you will most likely try to imitate what others are doing so as not to be exposed, so as not to break the illusion that everything makes sense. This metaphor, though simple, places us at the heart of one of the densest, darkest, and most transformative works of human thought. We are referring to Being and Time, published in the year 1927 by the German philosopher Martin Heidegger. We are looking at a book that is not simply an academic philosophy treatise, but a desperate and monumental attempt to answer the question that humanity has forgotten to ask, the question of the meaning of being. To understand the magnitude of this text, we must place ourselves in Germany at the beginning of the 20th century. Europe had just emerged from the First World War, a conflict that had shattered the certainties of progress and enlightened reason. In that vacuum of meaning, a man walks through the forests of the Black Forest, looking for an answer that, according to him, was lost more than 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece. Heidegger does not want to talk to us about ethics or politics or science in the traditional sense. He wants us to stop and look at the most obvious and yet most mysterious fact of all, the fact that things are and that we are here, existing among them. This starting point forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. Most of us spend our entire lives dealing with entities, that is, with things, objects, daily problems, tools, and people seen as functions. We ask ourselves how phones work, how to earn more money, or what to have for breakfast tomorrow. But we almost never ask ourselves what it means for all of that to be. Heidegger calls this the forgetfulness of being. He says that since Plato and Aristotle, philosophy has been distracted cataloging the world as if it were a warehouse inventory, forgetting the light that allows those objects to be seen in the first place. To correct this 2 millennia-old error, Heidegger introduces a term that would become the cornerstone of his thought, Dasein. This German word, which literally means being there, is his way of referring to the human being. But pay attention, he does not use the word human or subject or person, because those words already come loaded with philosophical prejudices. Dasein is not a thing that is inside a room. It is rather the very space where the world happens. It is a being that asks about its own being. This distinction is vital because it takes us out of the position of passive observers. We are not a mind locked in a skull looking out at a world of cold objects. We are, from the beginning, beings thrown into the world, already engaged with things and with others. This idea of being in the world is the first great conflict that the work presents to us. Imagine you are driving a nail with a hammer. As long as the hammer works well, you do not think of it as an independent object. You do not analyze its weight, its color, or its shape. The hammer is an extension of your arm, it is something ready to hand. Only when the hammer breaks, when it stops working, does it become present to us as an isolated object. In that moment, the natural flow of our existence stops and we begin to theorize. Heidegger uses this example to tell us that our primary relationship with reality is practical and fluid, not intellectual. The world is not a collection of data, it is a network of meanings and purposes. We are in the world like a driver is in their vehicle, not as a passenger, but as someone who operates and merges with the activity. But this inevitably leads us to another crucial aspect of our existence that Heidegger analyzes with almost surgical depth: the question of authenticity and the weight of social life. If we are beings thrown into the world, who decides who we really are? This is where Heidegger introduces the figure of the they, or the one, in German das Mann. Think of all the times you have said phrases like, "They say this year will be difficult," or "One is supposed to get married at a certain age," or "One dresses this way because it is the fashion." Who is that they or that one? It is no one in particular, and it is everyone at once. It is the dictatorship of the public, the invisible pressure of society that dictates how we should feel, think, and act. Most of us, most of the time, live in an inauthentic existence. We are not ourselves. Rather, we are a diluted version of what society expects of us. Heidegger describes this with three fascinating terms: idle talk, curiosity, and ambiguity. Idle talk refers to that superficial chatter where we repeat opinions we have not verified. Curiosity is that desire to always see something new, to jump from one distraction to another without deepening anything, something that today we would see perfectly reflected in the infinite scrolling of social media. And ambiguity is that state where everything seems understood, but at its core, nothing is comprehended. Living in the they is comfortable. It takes the weight of responsibility off our shoulders. If everyone does the same thing, then I cannot be wrong. However, this comfort comes at a very high price, the loss of our own essence. Dasein gets lost in the crowd, becoming just another object among objects. But to understand this fully, we must look toward that which breaks the illusion of the they and returns us to our own truth. There is a feeling, an affective disposition that Heidegger places above all others for its revelatory capacity: anxiety. It is important not to confuse anxiety with fear. Fear is always fear of something specific: a rabid dog, losing a job, an illness. Anxiety, on the other hand, has no object. It is that strange feeling that the world is slipping away from us, that all the labels and meanings we have built are collapsing, and we are left facing absolute nothingness. In anxiety, things stop being useful. The world loses its familiarity, and we are left alone with our own existence. But far from being something negative, Heidegger tells us that anxiety is a golden opportunity. It is the moment when Dasein realizes that it is free, that it does not have a fixed essence written in the stars, but rather that it is pure possibility. This recognition of one's own freedom leads us to the most famous and perhaps most misunderstood concept of the entire work: being towards death. Heidegger is not being macabre or depressive. For him, death is not an event that occurs at the end of life, like the last chapter of a book. Death is a possibility that is present in every moment of our existence. It is the possibility of impossibility, the limit that gives shape to everything we do. If we were immortal, nothing would have real importance because we could always postpone everything. Time would be an infinite resource and therefore valueless. But because we are finite beings, because we are going to die and we do not know when, every choice we make becomes crucial. Death is the only thing that no one can do for us. Someone can die in our place in an act of sacrifice, but no one can take away our own dying. By facing our mortality honestly, we break with the dictatorship of the day. We no longer care so much about what is said because we understand that our existence is unique and limited. Death individualizes us, tears us away from the mass, and forces us to be authentic. This leads us to one of the most complex structures of being and time, the concept of care, in German Sorge. Heidegger argues that the very essence of the human being is care. He is not just referring to caring for a sick person, but to the fact that our existence always matters to us. We are always projecting ourselves into the future, dealing with the present, and carrying our past. Care is the tripartite structure that defines our time. And this is where the title of the work takes on its full meaning. Time is not a line of successive dots measured by a clock. That is vulgar time, the time of objects. The time of Dasein is temporality. We are not in time like water is in a glass. We are time. Our past is not something that was left behind and disappeared. It is our facticity, the conditions into which we were thrown into the world and that continue to influence who we are today. Our future is not something that has not yet arrived. It is our project, the possibilities we choose at every step. And the present is the moment of resolution, where we take our past and launch it toward an authentic future. To expand on this idea of temporality, think about how we experience a moment of deep joy or a moment of intense pain. In those instances, the clock on the wall seems to lie. Heidegger tells us that this is the true nature of time. It is an opening, a horizon that allows things to show themselves to us. If we were not temporal, we could not understand what it means to be. Being is time. This revelation is shattering because it destroys the idea that there exists an eternal static truth outside the world. Everything that is in time. It is subject to history and finitude. But this vision, far from being nihilistic, is a call to action and extreme responsibility. If we are the creators of meaning in a world that has no prior script, then every one of our actions is a vote for the type of world we want to inhabit. But how does all this philosophical scaffolding translate to our modern reality, saturated with technology and information noise? If we analyze Heidegger's legacy under the lens of current neuroscience and technology, we find amazing connections. In the 21st century, the concept of the they has taken on a force that Heidegger could barely glimpse. Social media algorithms are the mathematical embodiment of what they say. They are designed specifically to keep us in a state of infinite curiosity and constant idle talk, moving us away from any trace of revelatory anxiety. We live in an era of total availability, where everything must be immediately ready to hand. Heidegger warned about the danger of seeing the world and ourselves as a standing reserve or a resource to be exploited efficiently. When we see ourselves as user profiles, as data to be processed, or as human capital, we are falling into the deepest form of inauthenticity. We are forgetting the question of being once again to become mere countable objects. Even artificial intelligence can be analyzed from this perspective. Many narrative experts and philosophers of mind wonder if a machine could ever become a Dasein. According to the logic of being and time, the answer would be a resounding no, at least for now. An artificial intelligence does not die, it does not feel the anxiety of its own finitude, and therefore it does not have a being that matters to it. The machine processes entities, but it does not inhabit being. It does not have a world in the Heideggerian sense because it has no purposes, desires, or the weight of a history lived in the flesh. This distinction is fundamental to understanding why, despite all our technological advances, we still feel that existential void, that nostalgia for something we cannot name. It is the echo of our own being calling us to leave the inertia of everyday life. However, to understand this fully, we must look toward the connection between language and our ability to inhabit the world. Heidegger said that language is the house of being. It is not just a tool for transmitting information, as if we were sending data packets from one brain to another. Language is what opens the space for things to be. When we name something, we pull it out of the darkness and give it a place in our network of meanings. In the era of instant communication, language has been worn down. We use empty words, cliches, and slogans that are not born from authentic experience. Recovering the sense of being also implies recovering language, returning to words that have weight, that have shadow, and that are capable of naming the mystery of our existence. This profound deconstruction forces us to look at our own lives with brutal honesty. Heidegger proposes a path that goes from falling to resolution. Falling is our natural tendency to lose ourselves in the world of things and in the opinions of others. It is inevitable, it is part of being human. But resolution is the act of will by which Dasein assumes its own finitude and decides to live according to its own possibilities. It is an awakening. This awakening does not lead us to an isolated mountain to meditate, but returns us to the world, though with a different gaze. Now we see the hammer, we see others, we see our work, not as imposed obligations, but as parts of a project we have chosen, or at least that we have decided to assume with awareness. The relevance of this thought in modern psychology is undeniable. Many existential therapies are based precisely on the idea that anxiety is not always a disorder to be eliminated, but a sign that we are living inauthentically. It is the call of conscience asking us to stop being a reflection of what others want. By accepting our mortality, by accepting that we are beings towards death, paradoxically, we begin to truly live. Fear of death is usually, in reality, a fear of not having lived, of having stayed on the surface of things. Heidegger pushes us into the abyss so that we discover we have wings. As we delve into the structure of this work, we realize that Heidegger never finished being and time. The book we know is only the first part of a much more ambitious project that remained unfinished. But perhaps that final silence is the most coherent closure possible. The question of being does not have a definitive answer that can be written in a manual. It is not a mathematical theorem that can be proven. It is a path that each Dasein must travel for themselves. Philosophy, for Heidegger, is not a system of beliefs. It is an activity. It is the act of staying awake before the mystery. It is a form of resistance against the mechanization of the spirit and the banalization of life. Having reached this point, we must ask ourselves what it really means to be authentic in a world designed for us to forget ourselves. Being authentic does not mean being original at all costs or being a rebel without a cause. It means recognizing our debt to the past, our responsibility to the present, and our openness toward the future. It means understanding that we are a conversation between time and eternity. Heidegger's work is an invitation to slowness, to listening, to mindfulness toward what surrounds us. It is a reminder that before we are consumers, employees, or citizens, we are beings who have the privilege and the burden of asking about the why of things. This journey through being and time has taken us from the charged atmosphere of interwar Germany to the depths of our own psyche and toward the challenges of the digital age. We have seen how the broken hammer reveals the world to us, how the they steals our identity, and how anxiety returns our freedom. We have understood that time is not something that passes, but something that we are. And although Heidegger's words can sometimes seem like a labyrinth of complex terms, his central message is of crushing simplicity and urgency. He tells us not to take existence for granted. He asks us to be amazed by the fact that there is something rather than nothing. In a 21st century marked by speed, noise, and the fragmentation of attention, returning to Heidegger is an act of intellectual rebellion. It is choosing depth over surface, the question over the easy answer, and authenticity over the simulacrum. The deconstruction proposed by being and time is not a destruction, but a clearing of debris. It is an invitation to inhabit the world in a more poetic way, more consciously, and ultimately, more humanly. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that will belong to us is the way we decide to inhabit our own being there. We have explored the most profound aspects of existence, from the fall into the everyday to the cold light of mortality. We have seen how Heidegger's philosophy acts as a mirror that reflects our fundamental essence back to us. But to understand this fully, we must look toward the last horizon that opens before us, the possibility of a new way of thinking that no longer seeks to dominate the earth but to care for it and listen to it. The greatness of a thinker is measured by their ability to make us feel uncomfortable in our deepest certainties. Martin Heidegger managed to point to a wound that remains open at the heart of modernity. His work reminds us that technique can give us the means to live, but it cannot give us the reasons for doing so. Those reasons can only be found in the silence of anxiety, in fidelity to our own history, and in the courage to look death in the eye to tell it that, as long as we are here, we will be the ones who decide the meaning of our time. The adventure of existing is, in essence, the adventure of searching for being in the midst of entities. It is learning to see the light and not just the illuminated objects. And although the path is difficult and often lonely, it is the only one that leads us to a life that deserves to be called our own. Being and time is not a destination, it is a map of a territory we are still discovering. Finally, we are left with the task of bringing these ideas into the realm of the everyday, not as abstract concepts, but as an attitude toward life. The next time you feel the weight of routine or the pressure to fit in, remember that you are pure time, that you are an open possibility, and that the world is something you are helping to create. The question of being is not answered with words, it is answered with existence itself. In that act of courage is where time stops and being finally shows itself in all its mysterious and fragile beauty. With this, we close our journey through one of the summits of universal thought, hoping that these ideas continue to resonate in your own being there long after this essay has ended.